We've got a couple student riders today, and we are going to start off with junior Ming-Mei Sosa. Come on up.
Hi, thank you all for coming. Before I get started with my poem, I want to give you some background information first. So basically, it's about a paradoxical doppelganger situation. For those of you who don't know what a doppelganger is basically if you'd had like an identical twin who's trying to infiltrate your life and steal your identity. So how this ties to my poem is it's basically about like a grieving version of someone whose life is being infiltrated by a happier version of them. And as the poem progresses on, it's basically about the happier version's life being infiltrated by the grieving ones. Here it is in A Wisp. Here lies obscurity. The carefully pressed alignments of these walls blend in a flick, all seeking to cave to this flame. Except for the me, lying here, these threads on my head tightly knit to a beckoning order. And my hands require sharper edges to truly get rid of the stench. There are words floating above my head, though their sources are scratched out and dissolved to the depths of the cyclic whirlpool. Why, oh why, can I rid myself of this itch that knows how to ignite this flesh? I lie in a symphony of dust, flinging myself to the ceiling to collapse on what looks like sand, sinking while fragments turn to static, tightly pressing my claws against my ears till they can't hear anything but the charcoal tattooing these wrists. I look at the window with expectancy. There she is, the itch, looking up at this war zone that has been given a blind eye from rows of frames, staring with hunger driven in her eyes, staring till the moon tried to sketch her an inconceivable outline, retreating her to the blisters of the light. But I know her eyes still stare at my figure that's lying on this concrete quilt, smeared with certainty that she won't let herself fade. For how could you walk away from a reflection? She's in the rooms outside these crumbling walls. I can feel her presence as she leaps from floor to floor. I was too distracted by the shifting blues that suddenly slipped in the blur of grays. I turned to the foggy mirror only to find an erratic gleam that filters the air out of these polyester lungs. And there she is, my unshakable slit, on a pedestal with my name, her smile curling like mustard as she laughs and bursts shards of glass. She moves like a leaf, trying to hypnotize everyone in its path. I won't have it, won't allow it. That's not me, can't you see? I'm lying here. I won't have her conceal me like a zit and bloom into a blaze. Won't have her flutter from tree to tree, beaming pastel while pretending to be gold. She's stuck with me. I'll never really leave. Even now, outside my room, as she sketches vines over the cracks and has frames with figures of amber on the walls. If she's the picture breaking through the seams, then I'm the frame. I stick hairpins on her floor so she can feel these pangs. Slipping into the moonless night after feeling a flick of what I believe to be ease. There won't ever be ease. She stole what was mine away. Mine, all mine. She'll never get rid of this obscurity. I stand outside her door, knowing she has an abundance of them on the other side. My eyes are tinted with the dying reminiscence of smoke, and she refuses to look out anymore. Till one day, as I watch the frostbite festering to my fingertips, a paper dragonfly flew to the glaciers surrounding me. I tried to pick it up, but it became as hot as a flame that somehow didn't leave a wound at my palm. Written on the side, where fragments shrink together to match a bewildering set of tunes. I'm sorry. Even though I'm not the one you wanted it from, I'm sorry. You can stop now. I collapse to my knees, but I can't make myself weep. Who would go through the burden of writing this to Wisp like me? I wish I learned to stop the outline here, before my hands learned what the color red was from spatters of ink. Signed.
said yesterday, that's what Writers Expo is all about. Celebrating the writing, hearing the individual voices in this building. It's fantastic. Can we give Ming-Mei one more round of applause? And Kurt, could you just pull up the first slide for me one more time? So we did this yesterday once, but the kind of major quote, the very first slide. Yeah, there you go. For this year's Writers Expo is from Alice Childress. Writing is a labor of love and also an act of defiance, a way to light a candle in a gale wind. And I feel like Ming-Mei, that was a great example of lighting a candle in a gale wind. And I've read the speech that you're about to hear from the next presenter. It is the exact same thing. Please welcome Senior Eddy Li.
Today, I want to talk about what makes a great book. But to address this, I first need to discuss what it means to be human. Classical thinking dictates that being human is dualistic. The first part of being human is materialistic. We all have a body, we all have a brain. But the great deception of this world is that everything is materialistic. It's ingrained in our society that to be successful means to go to school, get a well-paying job, and earn money. Only when we have things will we be happy. The second part of being human is spiritual. That's our consciousness and our soul. Through our imagination, we can create reality. But we can only use our imagination with our attention. And if our attention is diverted or distracted, others can impose their realities onto us. In his famous book, The Republic, Plato wrote the allegory of the cave. The allegory of the cave describes prisoners chained to a cave and looking at shadows on a wall. Their gaze is entirely fixated on those moving shadows, which they perceive as reality. To create shadows, there must be a source of light. Plato never says who or what is creating the shadows, but one can infer that it is the inherent evil that resides in our world. Since the prisoner's attention is solely fixated on that wall, they cannot imagine a world outside of the cave. They do not know of the sun or the trees or the rivers carrying water. They are living the reality that someone else wants because they lack attention, and with it, imagination. A great book trains the imagination. It taps into your spiritual subconscious, because you are able to imagine the characters, how they speak and how they act, and how they connect to a reality different, yet the same as ours. I'd like to use Macbeth as my first example, from Shakespeare's play of the same name. It's in Macbeth we can see how great authors make their characters come alive. Macbeth is at first presented as a loyal noble, fighting under the Scottish King Duncan, who was also his cousin. However, his wife, Lady Macbeth, has higher aspirations for him and convinces him to kill Duncan while he is a guest at their estate. Now, there are two of Macbeth's soliloquies that I want to focus on. The first is the soliloquy in which Macbeth hallucinates a bloody dagger the night before he is to kill Duncan. He tells himself that the dagger is meant to encourage him to murder his king, his cousin. He tricks himself into believing that this event has been fated, and in doing so, he puts on a mask. Shakespeare didn't need to include the soliloquy. It didn't add important details, but it allows the audience to imagine Macbeth. You can imagine Macbeth's childhood that led to his cognitive dissonance. You can imagine Macbeth's internal struggle and guilty conscience as he pursues glory, and you can imagine his sleepless nights ahead. Again, this is what a great book does. It allows you to imagine the universe that the author created in its entirety. Macbeth is a living, breathing person, and you can see it. You can imagine it. The second soliloquy occurs when Macbeth learns of his wife's death. Upon hearing this news, Macbeth rants about how life carries no meaning and signifies nothing. In order to cement his power, Macbeth had to murder other innocent citizens too. We never hear of the majority of these killings, but we can imagine them. We can imagine how the devil's mask that Macbeth put on to kill Duncan went on to control his soul. And we can imagine, perhaps, what Shakespeare wanted us to imagine. Of the danger of a mask, we all become what we pretend to be. Shakespeare wrote Macbeth more than 400 years ago. And one may wonder, isn't this stuff outdated? Well, it's not if we can wonder what Macbeth wondered about. Is the path toward glory real? Can a human control their fate? Shakespeare's universe of Macbeth is one of many imaginative universes created by the great books. And these universes all form one reality, which is, in turn, our own. Another example I would like to use is the Iliad, a book that gave birth to ancient Greek civilization. I won't go into the plot because I assume that many of you are familiar with the Trojan War. And there's one particular scene in the Iliad that I want to focus on, and it's when Odysseus and other Greek leaders go to Achilles to try to convince him to return to help the Greeks. Previously, Agamemnon, the leader of the Greeks, and Achilles had a big argument. And Achilles thought that Agamemnon had made him lose face. So he and his forces returned to their ships and refused to fight for the Greeks until Agamemnon personally came and apologized. The delegation that came to Achilles didn't include Agamemnon. Odysseus leads the delegation, and he gives a speech to Achilles. Taking a step back, there are two ways to control someone's reality. The first is through fighting, and this is where Achilles excels. If you are stronger than someone, you are physically able to control what they do. The second is through speech making, and this is Odysseus' forte. Through memorable words and details, you are able to control the reality of someone else, because people's perception of reality is based on their memories and recollection. So when Odysseus speaks to Achilles, he is trying to craft a new reality. It's a battle for the narrative. If Odysseus can describe things in such a way that Achilles can remember his words, Odysseus has created a new narrative for Achilles. If Odysseus doesn't say anything fascinating or memorable, Achilles will stick with his current narrative. Odysseus could have easily said, "Achilles, all of us are dying out here. Please help." But instead, he uses imagery, metaphor, and diction all to craft his narrative. He is able to lift off of his own brain and think about Achilles and how he wants to influence him. Odysseus includes details of the past, how Achilles had promised his father glory on the shores of Troy. He includes details of the present, how Hector, the Trojan warrior, is slaughtering the Greeks, unkillable like a god, and about to reach and burn the Greek ships. And he includes details of the future, how after winning this war, all of the treasures of Troy will open themselves to Achilles. Though not as detailed as Odysseus, I'm trying to do the same thing. As I'm speaking, I'm taking into consideration your experiences so that I can still influence you 1 month, 1 year, 1 decade into the future. Odysseus' speech is not the only important part of this interaction. It's Achilles' selfish and egotistical character too. Though separated by more than a 2,000-year gap, I am still able to imagine myself as Achilles, as someone who is self-destructively proud and ambitious. And when we can imagine ourselves as a character, our general capacity for empathy and understanding increases. This is what a great book does. It makes you more human. I'd like to end by alluding once again to Plato's allegory of the cave. Our attention defines reality. We can choose that reality to be the one defined by other powers. We can choose to embrace the material desires, those of wealth, recognition, and entertainment. or we can break the brittle chains that bind us in the cave. The ancient philosophies realized that when we discard material desire, when we break the brittle chains that hold us in the cave, we are free to pursue what we truly care for. The human doesn't need anything but their imagination to be happy. The human can love without being loved back. The human can live without money. Whether the chains in the cave are weak or strong depends on perception. Live life in ignorant comfort, and those chains become impossible to break. But by making the conscious choice to imagine, to question reality, and to become more human, perhaps even by reading the great books, and those chains will no longer exist. I'm not saying that there is a right or wrong choice. I'm just differentiating between them. I thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Eddie. Imagination and choice. Those are two things I've been actually thinking about a lot the past couple of years with Writers Expo, because it's really tough to try and figure out in the 21st century, like, how do we take Writers Expo and make it something that's meaningful to students, and like meaningful to every student if we can. And on the one hand, we would all probably want things that are just entertaining because they're easy, right? But on the other hand, yeah, we do have a life to live. We do have goals. We do have things that we can't control about the future, right? So I think the challenge becomes, how can we take kind of what Eddie's talking about, right? How can we take our imagination and how can we then use it to find the material in any given period that we can actually take away with us in whatever we're doing in life, whether we plan on being writers or not, that will help us improve our life, make us better people, etc. Okay? Yesterday was probably pretty challenging. It was fun. You got a dad joke competition. You got Mr. Bizorg playing some songs, right? Probably very easy to enjoy, but I think the question is there anything there that you could take away with you, right? Did you see them doing something that you felt was an example of something you yourself can do? Or was there something that Mr. Bizorg said that you felt like you could take away with you, right? It's not always easy when you've got the entertaining stuff. Today what we've got for you is more on the practical end, okay? Trying to think about just the world you're living in, the world you're going into, how we can help you in that sense. But again, even with something like this, I just want to kind of throw out there at the beginning the challenge of, like, can you use your imagination to figure out how the things that the people on stage today are talking about can actually apply to your life so that you can make choices that benefit you, okay? Today what we have is a professional panel with two guests who are not only professionals, but parents of students here at LHS. Please give them a big round of applause. We have Mrs. Julie Kern and Mr. Tom Thomey. Come on up, guys. So here's how the next, about 22 minutes is going to go. I have some questions prepared for the two of them, and they've thought through some different things that they feel might be able to help you all heading into potentially the professional world, thinking about how writing applies to that. We are going to try and have time as well for questions from you, okay? But the first thing I would like them to do is just introduce themselves. Tell us a little bit about what it is you do, professionally speaking.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So I'm Julie Kern. What I do is medical writing, and it is essentially taking science at a high level with clinical studies and presenting the results in different manners, abstracts, presentations, papers, and then trying to convey that in a clear and concise manner to the external world all over the place.
Hi, my name is Tom Thomey. I own a small consulting company of 40 employees, and I'm a technology person. And growing up, sitting in your seat, I never thought I'd do a lot of writing because I was going towards a technical position. But I've found throughout my career that there has been a lot of writing in it, particularly early on. Today, most of my writing has to do about proposals, about team alignment, team communication, position papers, getting folks around the ideas that I have to drive the vision of the company, and yeah, it's a little bit about what I'm doing these days.
For the job that each of you have, is that what you've been doing for a long time, or has there been a journey that's led to this?
Yeah, so I went to college and got my bachelor's degree in biology, and then decided I wanted to go on to graduate school and expand my scientific knowledge in more of a research capacity. So, so college was Augustana College, small school. Graduate school was University of Texas at Austin, go Longhorns. Then I did postdoctoral research at UW-Madison, go Badgers. And then decided after that, I loved the research world, but I really enjoyed the writing that I did as part of the research world, and got into medical writing then. So kind of took what I had learned from a scientific capacity and, expanded that into the writing world. So I've been a medical writer for 20 years, 15 of which have been on my own as a single proprietor business, and then I work with physicians and pharmaceutical companies and medical communication companies that are all across the world.
So my beginning was all around technology. I've got a degree in computer science, a BS in computer science, a BS in applied science, and a math minor from the University of Wisconsin, Parkside, but go Badgers, I still love the Badgers. So when I came out of college, I went into programming. That's what I did. So I was writing code, and I really didn't think about even how writing was going to affect that job. I was just writing software, but you have to document the code so that someone can come behind you and fix it someday if you made a mistake, or you have to write user manuals and system guides. And so writing became a big part of what I did early in my career, and I think the people I work for recognize that I seem to have a knack for that. I have probably my high school teachers most to thank for that. I didn't do a lot of writing in college. In high school, Mr. Melodzik, Mr. Schmidt, Mrs. Bodvin encouraged writing for me, and I enjoyed it, but it wasn't something I thought I had a passion for. And as my career has progressed, I've learned that communication and language and writing are truly one of the strengths that I have, because it allows me to get my ideas out to others. And so that's why today most of my writing, although not large in volume, is more about trying to meet people where they're at in terms of their careers, in terms of their aspirations for their jobs, and how our company can align with that mission and vision for them.
And just to be clear, when you say Mr. Schmidt, you don't mean current English teacher.
I don't think so. Yeah, Mr. Schmidt might be the one I knew might be a little bit older, but he was very impactful in my life for sure.
Just want to make sure we clarified that. And then Julie, March Madness is right around the corner. If the Badgers and the Longhorns play each other, who are you rooting for?
Is it the girls or the boys? So for Texas, the girls. For the Badgers, the boys.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the type of writing you do as a part of your job now. Julie, I didn't even know medical writing was a thing until I was like 25 years old. So why don't you just kind of take people through what that means?
So medical writing is kind of like a massive group project, essentially. So we work with people all across the world. Yeah, a lot of people in North and South America, Europe, Asia, a few physicians in Australia. And essentially you're just bringing a team of people together from different parts of the world and then different functions. So one project may include a physician who ran the clinical study. It may include different people from the pharmaceutical company that run the clinical aspects, the research aspects, the business, the commercial sides of the business. And then you have to bring everybody together in a logical manner for one endpoint, like one thing that you're trying to present. And then the challenge is trying to bring everybody's ideas all together in one place in a logical manner, follow the guidelines that you're given. I'm sure your teacher gives you all kinds of guidelines for each project. And each project I do also has guidelines depending on where and when you're presenting the information. So it's really just bringing a lot of thoughts together to present something in a clear and concise manner and on time.
And tell us what we're looking at here.
Okay, so this looks crazy, I'm sure, but so one project may include a publication in a peer-reviewed journal, like New England Journal of Medicine or Blood or Journal of Clinical Oncology. And so what we do is take what is required from a clinical study, put it together so that the study could be replicated in another place, and try and explain it. So give some background and rationale for why you're doing something, present the results and how it was done, and then try and place it in context with other treatments that are in the same treatment landscape. And if you look at the next slide, there's one example of, and we also do tables and figures and put them, try and present them in the most logical but also clear manner and make sure that it's accurate based on what was done in the study. So this could be in a publication forum, it could be presented at a large conference, it could be submitted as a small summary, any different kinds of mediums, and you just work with your team to make sure that you present it in the proper way and accurate.
Those of you who have or will be taking AP seminar in the English department or AP research, this is the type of stuff you definitely might be looking at some point. So Julie, are you writing like all of these words, or is this a team effort in some respect? How does that work?
So my job is to provide support for physicians who are treating patients and pharmaceutical companies who are developing drugs. Typically, I'll write the first draft of everything, and then as a team, we'll review and refine and make sure it says the proper messages. It's essentially like this huge scientific story. Like, what story are you trying to tell, but also be accurate with what you're trying to convey.
How long are we talking in terms of number of pages here?
So this paper was probably 55 pages, double-spaced. It had anywhere between 10 and 15 tables and figures. On a typical timeline, there's a logical flow of development, review, finalize. A typical timeline for that would be anywhere between 12 and 18 months because you have so many people contributing to the project.
So is there a hard deadline, or is it just like when it's ready, it's ready?
So the papers, when it's ready, it's ready. And when the data are ready, it's ready. For abstracts, we typically have a hard deadline for those because the conferences need a certain review time before they decide what they're going to do with it. So the abstracts tend to take like 2 months.
Awesome. Before we move on, are there any questions from the audience about medical writing itself or what you see on the screen? Just want to make sure if there's... Yeah, in the way back there. Shout it out.
What's the most interesting thing that you've written about?
It's usually pretty dry, but the most interesting things that I write about are the studies that are in phase 3 of development, and that means they're at the final stages, and what you're writing will lead to the approval of a treatment that can go into patients immediately. So those are the most exciting, the ones that that are really making a difference to patient care and therapy in different disease states.
I think there might have been a hand. Yeah, Mrs. Lemaitre, go for it.
Is the writing pretty formulaic, or do you have opportunities to infuse your own voice or creativity into the writing?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. So the way you present the information, the methodology and the results, those are fairly formulaic, but how you describe it at the beginning to make sure it's clear and you provide a rationale and discussion of the results, that's a little more creative and where you can embellish a lot more.
Awesome, thank you. Tom, I imagine small business owner, you've got a bunch of different types of writing. Why don't you kind of take us through some of the stuff you do?
Sure. Again, a big part of my job today, one of the things I actually enjoy about it is I'm still writing quite a bit, but because you're doing a lot of the authoring of this on websites, you get the opportunity to bring pictures in and diagrams and things that reinforce what you're writing. It's something that, again, not something I've ever had any formal training in, but has allowed me to really tell a story in a much different way because we know that people may or may not read all of the information that we're writing, particularly in the business world. I'm not sure if you have that experience, Julie, but I know I do. But what you can do is use images that hopefully capture their imagination and get them to stay with the article or to even pick up information. So what you're seeing here is my weekly team communication on the right-hand side, and I think my bio on the left, which again goes through some of the things I've talked about. I think the next piece is a proposal. This is, I wish we had 12 months to do these at times. In the technical industry, you often, there's something called an RFP, a request for a proposal, where a potential client is looking for someone that can do something for them, in our case, in the technical world. And they have these very elaborate requests for proposal documents that you need to comply with almost exactly in terms of an outline, which quite honestly I don't like, because it really takes away from the creativity that I'd like to bring, but it doesn't mean that I can't bring my voice to the different sections. So those documents, like Julie, I author them generally from start to finish, but then give them to my team to examine different sections and to bring additional clarifications and things that they're seeing that I may not have caught. Luckily, we don't do a lot of these, but when we do, it's very disruptive to the calendar. We generally get 2 weeks to write one of these things, to give you some idea. It's 75 pages was the last one we did. It's not boilerplate, at least most of the body isn't, because every client's asking for something different. But there is some creativity, because they're asking you to do things that we haven't done before. And I think in my role in the company as the visionary, I have an opportunity to explore new ways of doing things, new notions of how we might apply different processes and people skills and software to solve their need. So it's exciting, but it's a very hectic pace to get it done on time. So yeah.
So you both do, a couple different types of writing in your various jobs. For a bunch of high school students, what would you say is like the one writing skill that you feel people really should try and master as soon as possible?
It's interesting, because as leading into this, I've been thinking about this a lot, and how I've gotten to where I'm at. And I think when I was younger, I was always trying to write to impress the reader. And I think that didn't serve me well, because I was not writing necessarily in my voice. I was trying to impress them, for lack of a better term. And as I've gotten older, and today, I'm realizing that, whatever capabilities and skills and talents I have are mine, and mine alone. And my job is to tell that story from my voice, from my point of view. And my job is not to convince people. My job is to give them a different perspective on something that's mine, and then they can ultimately decide if that's something that they either agree with, either in whole or part, or none at all. But I think, I'm not sure it's a skill, but I think changing my attitude from trying to impress to what I had to offer has significantly made my writing a lot easier, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I would also say I think you have to listen to the people around you to make sure that you're conveying a message that everyone agrees with, but also that meets the needs of your audience, while also staying true to yourself and being clear and concise in what you're trying to present. So working together as a team.
I'm curious, Julie, when you send your papers out to be edited by others, how is that experience to you? Because there was a time in my career when I was like a baby not wanting to take the medicine, and I couldn't stand other people's feedback. Where today I see it as a blessing and a gift, but...
Yeah, but constantly get feedback, and you have to integrate it as well as you can while also being accurate with the information. And usually there's one or two people who are the final say, that like whatever they say goes, as long as you're accurate.
The professional landscape is always changing, right? Culture is always changing. Is there anything, generations, right? Like people are always changing. Is there anything that you're seeing right now in terms of maybe the younger generation coming into the workplace that you feel might be a trend that you would want to warn students against, particularly if it has to do with writing or communication?
Well, I do worry that we're communicating more and more like we do with social media in fragmented notions that a small group of people might understand, but not the collective. I don't know if that's a problem. Based on what we just heard from Ms. Sosa and Mr. Li, I'd say that we're in good shape because the writing was tremendous, and just so impressed with those young people getting up and putting themselves out there. But I do worry about communication being dumbed down a bit. I'm not saying it is, but I worry about that possibility. I think, using my father's voice, because he was born in 1925, the things that he read and interested him were serious works. And at least from my point of view, and the stuff I was reading, at least in my teens, was probably not so serious. And I think hopefully that's not a trend overall, but that comes to mind for me. That I'd keep an eye on that. Language, communication, how we write is the essence of being human.
Yeah, and just to expand on that, I think the most effective work is done when you either have face-to-face interaction, or you're speaking on the phone, or via a Zoom call, a virtual call. That is so much more effective than just writing an email.
My next question was going to be agree or disagree. Writing is also something you're doing in your head anytime you're having a face-to-face conversation or talking to an audience at large. Does that resonate in your line of work?
All the time.
Well, no doubt. I mean, I think, honestly, I think my brain, at least, and I suspect most, there's constant noise. There's constant thoughts. And it's not until I try to write them down that it begins to make sense to me, because there's so much going on in a moment, and it's hard to pause. And I think writing is that opportunity to take a moment and try to distill that very active mind that we all have to something that is got meaning for you. And then if you're bold enough and strong enough to share it with someone, they might get something out of it as well.
I do have a couple other questions, but I want to make sure you guys have a chance to ask anything that's on your mind. So, does anyone have a question? Make sure you raise your hand high. Otherwise, I'm just gonna ask about the elephant in the room, AI. How is that affecting things?
AI, yep, it's definitely coming. There are advantages and disadvantages to AI in my world, in the medical writing world. Just to start off, to say it's not allowed right now in most journals and Congress abstracts, because there is so much of what, I don't know how much you know about it, but AI has the potential to generate hallucinations, which means they'll compile all the information but then start to make up stuff. So that is the biggest challenge right now in medical writing, that it starts to make up things. And in medical writing, you have to be based on fact. It has to be something that's accurate and factual. So the use of AI is coming, but it needs a lot more clarification in how it's used and the sources that are being used and how they're being relied on for it to be effective right now.
So I mentioned I'm in the technology industry. AI is the most transformational technology in my life. But it worries me. But the power of it is truly amazing. But I'm also reminded, too, that when computers came around, we were afraid of it. When mobile phones came around, we were afraid of it. When the internet came, it was really just for science and communication, and then it became a place for advertising and business growth. And so we tend to figure these things out. And AI has transformed my ability to produce, is the thing I would say that it has done for me. I tend to like things done really well. So when I write things before AI, I had two people that always edited my work. And that's how I knew I had something good is when they edited and I made final changes and then published it. And again, it was good, except it took a lot of time to get that done. It took them a lot of time, took them away from what they were doing. And AI has now allowed me to do those things a lot faster. And I think, are we done?
That was the bell, yeah. But
Okay.
thank you so much, guys. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Hope you
you.
enjoyed Writers Expo. Have a great day, folks.